Live. So hello and welcome everyone to Family Law Fridays presented by Florida Women's Law Group. I'm Jadlyn Fleischer, a legal intern here at Florida Women's Law Group. Family Law Fridays is designed to be a resource for all women with any type of family law issue. Today we'll be discussing local resources that are still providing support for women who have been victims of domestic abuse during COVID-19. Before we get started, I'd like to give you some information about our host. Our host is Heather Quick, founder and CEO of Florida Women's Law Group, which is a family law firm that advocates for women in North Florida. The firm educates and empowers women on their right and the law so that they can find the strength to endure the process and end up better financially and emotionally. Heather Quick has been a licensed Florida attorney for the past 20 years, with the majority of her practice over the years being in family law. Please join me in welcoming Heather Quick to Family Law Fridays.
Hello, everyone. I apologize for a few little video adjustments, trying to get it just right. And I'm not sure if that's it, so I appreciate your patience. But no, I'm looking at you and I'm trying to figure out all the details. I hope everyone is doing well. Here in Northeast Florida, it seems as though the mood is lifting. I certainly hope everyone has a reason to, find hope in something and is, really working on staying positive, of course, staying healthy and safe in everything that is going on. So we have had a lot of individuals reach out to the firm and personally to many members of the team during this particular situation that we're all in with the COVID-19, the stay at home or safe at home orders, and it has to do with issues of domestic violence. And, when you're dealing with those kind of situations, it's difficult enough. In my career, I have had experience in multiple areas of domestic violence, from as a prosecutor, prosecuting the criminal side of domestic violence, as well as the violations of injunctions. And that was several years ago. The law has evolved a bit since then, but a lot of it remains the same. The issues that individuals and couples face remain the same. I think the law has expanded and evolved as, just with society and as far as definition and who qualifies within that realm of relief. So within the area of domestic violence, we're dealing with partners and family members. So most of it is married. A lot, but that is not the minimum requirement. So there can be domestic violence alleged and fall within that statute, within that category, for children against their parents, or a mother with the child included with the parents. It could be a family member that maybe lived together, no longer does live there, and certainly there can be instances when you are in a romantic relationship with someone, and sometimes there's stalking, harassment, as well as the definitions under the domestic violence statute. Which brings me to defining that for everyone, because I think the word is used a lot, the terms are used a lot, and it's important because so many women, and men, we represent women only. So I definitely focus on the representation of women, but I'm not stating that these statutes and the law is only for women. That is just our practice area, so that's the way I approach it in this video. I am talking to women who are in this situation because that is who we help within our office. So when we look at that type of situation, and it's a domestic violence situation. Not everyone calling our office recognizes that as such for many reasons. And I'm not going to get into the psychological part of domestic violence and really what goes on with all of that, but I do want you to know, anyone who's watching this and or knows somebody who may be experiencing this type of situation. Sometimes it's the situation where you're in it and it didn't happen overnight, and it has evolved and you're together, and sometimes you forget or want to forget, maybe in denial, that this is not normal. It's not normal behavior. You don't deserve this, and it's not normal. And so I want to encourage anyone watching this that you do have a right to stand up for yourself. There are resources available to you, even when we're in this COVID-19. And I want to talk about why this in and of itself is creating a heightened level of domestic violence instances really across the country. And I want to encourage anyone who is either in that situation and a victim or knows someone to please know that the resources aren't shut down. There are still resources available to you, and I'm going to go over that. So one of the thresholds for going to court on an injunction, because not everyone thinks they qualify. And so that's why it is important to talk to an individual. We're going to talk about the resources that are still available to you, but I just want to share with you that telling your story, being able to, in confidence, to explain what's going on with you is very important. Don't leave anything out, because you are in that situation. Someone from the outside looking in can have a much more objective view and help you understand what parts qualify for or meet the standard in the statute. So if you are in fear for your life or for the life of your child due to a situation you're in, that's usually the threshold of where we are. So there are instances where there are really heated arguments, difficult situations. And I met with people and they're like, I am not afraid. And they aren't. And I mean, obviously I'm not encouraging anyone to state something that's not true, but that is part of it. And now, is your fear reasonable? That's not as much the standard, because it's very fact specific. If there's been a prior incident, that goes into it. And that prior incident, please know, doesn't have to be through the arrest of police, through where law enforcement was involved or where you sought an injunction. For the professionals who have experience with domestic violence, we know that by the time it gets reported or you seek outside help, there have more likely than not been many instances before. And that, just because this is the first time you are speaking out doesn't mean it didn't happen before. And yes, when we are seeking, if you are in a situation and you are afraid and you don't know what to do, because everyone's at home and they're at home much more than normal, and there's very few places to go outside the home as the restaurants are closed, our beaches have limited openings, and many of the recreation and sports that we used to do aren't currently open. That heightens the situation because there's not a lot of places to go. So if you are in, that situation and it is getting physical, or you're afraid it's going to be physical, that's when it's time to reach out. You don't have to wait until there is actual physical contact and physical abuse, because many times, a lot of, in my experience that I've seen, and many professionals would have a lot to offer in this, But there is threats, intimidation, bullying. It's just to put the fear in you. And that is clearly the intent, is to make you know and help you know that this individual threatening you, your husband or your boyfriend, your significant other, your ex-husband, they want you to know and be afraid that the next time they may actually hit you. That if you push them, if you leave them, that they might kill you. They will do something to your children. Those are the very typical types of threats. Many times there are talk of weapons, and the weapons, it may not be threatening you with the weapon in front of you, but it's the words, it's the talk of, well, I have guns, or, I sold that gun, but I went and got a new one today. And it's not just that one statement, but it's all coupled with a situation. And that's where it where I'm trying to communicate for anybody in this situation, by talking with someone in a confidential setting, in a situation where you can fully explain all of the circumstances. That's how you get help, and that's how they can understand what's going on, whether it's through the outreach centers, the shelters, the hotline, or an attorney, or a therapist, for that matter. There are so many, a minister, a pastoral counselor, things like that, where you're able to fully explain everything. My goal for you is that you then will get clarity on what's going on, and some support that, one, you're not to blame, two, you're not crazy, and three, this isn't normal or safe. And that's when, if you can hear that through that confidential communication, you can move forward. Because many times, and over many years, there can be threats, intimidation, and it can be physical, but maybe it's not that way at first. It can start with a lot of verbal abuse and threatening and putting you down and keeping you in a situation where over time you'll recognize, like, who am I? I have been in this oppressive, controlling, really abusive situation for some time. Those can be harder to recognize because, as I said, it doesn't happen like that. If you're punched, that's wrong. You do. That's abuse. And still, you may not leave. You may be afraid. Well, if he did that, what else is he going to do? What will he do now if I actually take action, when that was just, he was angry with me? That's a valid, I want you to know, I know that's a valid fear, and it is something that women struggle with. However, there are so many resources available that it's important to know that, yes, you are afraid of that, but if you are able to get the legal means that are available to you behind you, and that support, and then to gain your strength back, then you take away his power. You take away the power of an abuser when you're able to stand up for yourself, because they are so successful over time by reducing your self-esteem, increasing your fear. And there usually is if you think about it, there is a decrease in your social circle and a decrease in your freedom. So it's more control. Now, and that's why, particularly where we are here at the end, towards the end of April 24th, in 2020, in the COVID-19 pandemic, we are already so limited with our contacts and family by virtue of the orders of the state, our employers. So even if you were in this situation before, but you had a way to at least get out, you could go to work, you could take a walk, go exercise, or visit with your family. that may not be available to you right now. And that's where I would say the dangerousness of the situation can increase. Because whether you're, if you're able to work from home, and if you have children, well, they're at home, there's virtual school, that's one layer. If either you or your spouse have suffered a decrease in income, okay, that's another added stressor. And the continual togetherness and just the normal stress of life, which can be, of course, job, family, and circumstances are at a heightened level. And I think that many individuals, myself included, sometimes we always have a shorter fuse because we don't have as much time to ourselves. We don't have as much time to decompress. So it could be that you could handle whatever was going on previously, or it was easier to be in denial because you each were able to leave the home. There was a lot of activity going on. Maybe there wasn't as much of the intimidation, threats, violence previously. And now everybody's been home 3 to 4 weeks. We're not sure when it's going to end. All of those stressors can increase the tension in the home and increase the dangerousness of the situation. So one of the things that I want everyone to know is there are, at the very least, the hotlines for the shelters in and around Northeast Florida. They're open. If you call, someone will answer. So one, there's the National Domestic Violence Hotline, and they have that in more than 200 languages. So there's resources there for you if you need another language than English. And we will be posting that information on our Facebook page. For that number, the national hotline is 1-800-799-7233. I give you that because maybe you're watching this and you don't live in the Northeast Florida area. Call that number to begin, one, to get some help, clarity on your situation, and more likely than not, a referral for the closest area to you. Now, the Hubbard House is available in the Jacksonville area, and they provide really a safe haven for women that during this time. They can video chat, they can be there, one, to hear you, to support you, and help you feel less alone. Because of a limited opportunity to leave the home, like we talked about, there may be more abuse, more blame being felt against you. So within the Hubbard House, they do have a shelter, and that holds 116 beds. They also have victim advocates, and they can really help you in all the areas that are going to be a challenge at that time, but they do have beds, meals, and help you with personal amenities. And your children, you can take your children there. Now, additionally, during COVID, the hotline is fully staffed and operational, and the emergency shelter is open. Now, it may not be as open as it would pre-COVID pandemic because they are triaging, meaning assessing the level of your current situation. Again, so don't leave anything out. Be open. These are confidential communications. Explain what's going on. But they are accepting women if they assess it to be a highly lethal situation. You can't walk in, you really just need to call and start with the hotline. More likely than not, you're going to get some basic information, some basic guidance to continue on what you need to do. So I highly encourage you to do that if you are in the Duval area, Jacksonville. Now, additionally, in St. Johns County is the Betty Griffin Center. Now, they also have, it's not as big, but they have a 54-bed emergency shelter. They're operating the shelter services, and they also have a hotline 24-hour that is fully staffed to answer your questions. Again, please, if you have that opportunity, if you are, it may seem really difficult, and it is a big first step, but if you can recognize that the only way to protect yourself and your children is to take that first step and make that call. So reach out, because they are there, they're staffed, and they're trained. They're trained to hear what you have to say, ask you the right questions, and provide you with guidance. They are doing therapy sessions through, again, the video chat, just like the video conferences. And that, may be what you need if you have a place to go. Or we'll talk about if you take the injunction route, and if we do that and your husband is removed from the situation, they can continue to provide ongoing therapy and counseling. They are operating their shelter center. Again, that's going to be based on what is going on currently in your situation. And you have to talk to them and evaluate where that is, but they are there. So I encourage you to do that. In Clay County, that is the Quigley House, and their 24-hour hotline is available and open as well. They do have a domestic violence shelter, which is currently full. So doesn't mean you can't call the hotline, and I am not sure how they would help reference you if you needed a shelter to the other surrounding counties. But regardless, if you reach out, that's an important first step, because a lot of what you are suffering from, more likely than not, is isolation. And additionally, a lack of really who to talk to, who do you trust, because that's important, so that your husband, abuser, spouse doesn't, or boyfriend, whatever's going on, the violence doesn't increase if you tell the wrong person, and then it's not confidential. So as we are all coping with social distancing and virtual schooling for our children, and potentially, changes in our employment and our financial situation, it's important to recognize, and particularly if you're watching this and you may not be in that situation, but I encourage you just to pay attention, be a good friend if you're talking to somebody. And if you hear things that sound a bit off, be there for them. Encourage them to reach out to a confidential resource to get some guidance and help in what to do. Really, and I want to talk about the next thing is whether or not, what would be the ramifications of filing for an injunction. So in the surrounding counties, we've helped women file for injunctions over the years. Each clerk's office at the courthouse typically has individuals and clerks there who will assist you in filing those. That is limited or non-existent at this time. And I don't know, so I'm not going to tell you they're all closed. I just know that the contact with those staff that would normally be there is going to be limited, and there may be other people there. It may not be the wisest decision for you to go there. So if you think, well, I am afraid for my life, the verbal abuse is increasing, the physical abuse is increasing. Typically you'll see, combined with this, not always, but drug alcohol use, and then that escalates, and you haven't called the police for the situation. And I'm not saying that there's no judgment there. It's hard to know when's the right time, but or if it's at that level. So just because you haven't called the police about an incident doesn't mean that you can't proceed forward in applying for an injunction for protection. So what that is that's not criminal in and of itself in requesting an injunction. You just have to meet the requirements of being in fear for your life or your children's and adequately explaining the situation. So whether it's through the shelters or an attorney or a liaison from the clerk's office within the domestic violence, it's really important to get help in making sure you're including everything, because many times I would say, but I've seen women try to minimize it. You tell the story on one hand, but then you want to minimize it because it's embarrassing. It shouldn't be. You're a victim, but it's an embarrassing situation, and you don't really want to air that in front of everybody. And a lot of times, despite the fact that it's an unbearable, very unhealthy situation you're in, you are concerned about the ramifications for your significant other or your husband. And I would say those are normal feelings, but you have to place the feelings for yourself above that or your children. Generally, women tend to take action finally when they begin to realize it is affecting their children. I don't know what it is that helps you figure that out, but it is affecting your children. So you're kidding yourself. Again, that's part of the denial, to think that your kids don't know what's going on, and that you, by somehow taking this abuse, is shielding them from something. It's not. It's not a normal situation. It's not a healthy situation. And they're waiting for you to stand up for them and yourself. And so therefore, in completing the injunction, right now, everything can be done online. I do not know what the extent of the resources are for you to do that yourself. I do know that the shelters and the hotlines certainly are available to help you. Most family law attorneys are used to doing this. We've done it all the time for many clients who just didn't want to go down to the courthouse. They wanted the assistance and the guidance to get them through that. It then gets submitted to the judge, and if what you've written down meets the criteria of the law, the court's going to order that injunction to be placed against your husband, and the police will come serve it, and he will be removed from the home. And then there will be a hearing. Now, that's where it differs on the timing. Generally, it was always within 2 weeks, but right now, it depends on if children are involved. It's probably still going to be 2 weeks. And if not, it could be a month, but that just depends on the volume that is going on at the courthouse and how they're handling it in the various counties. But they are operating, and they are still ordering injunctions, and they are still holding hearings. So you may get an injunction on paper, but it will tell you if you have a hearing, whether it's by video or in person. And that is, that's something you have to take very seriously. And there is when it will become permanent or for a period of time. I know that is a lot of information that I've given everybody here today, but it's something that I believe very strongly in. Not everybody can always stand up for themselves. And so therefore, I believe it's important, one, to stand up, stand up for others, and for all of us to band together. And if you see a situation or are aware of somebody who may not be aware that this even exists, to then help them, give them these resources. At the end of the day, if you're in this situation, only you can get yourself out of it. And so if no one's really going to be able to come save you. Okay, there are situations if it gets bad enough that people hear and they may call the police, but that's not an injunction. It may or may not end up in an arrest. Sometimes in domestic violence situations, the abuser does not always go to jail. And sometimes the victim goes to jail. I have found that the abuser is sometimes a bit more skilled, artful in controlling the process and knows what to say. And, if you fight back for the first time, that could be the time he calls the police, and you could go to jail. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm saying the law is clear on what a domestic battery is. And you just need to be careful. You need to be careful when you're in this type of situation, one, for your life, for the safety of your life, because I don't believe I'm being over dramatic when I say it gets to a point sometimes, and that could be the next move. So if this gives you any clarity or any realization that you are not in a healthy situation, I really implore you to take action. And I think the best action, call the hotline. Talk to somebody who can maybe reassure you that you're not crazy. You're not to blame. But you also are in a situation that's unhealthy and that could escalate, particularly now while we're in the COVID-19. And I am very hopeful. I remain hopeful that we are going to, in the next few weeks, and start to see a lot of the prior restrictions lifted as we are seeing in other states. But I don't think it's going to be a quick return back. So just don't wait for everything to come back to normal, because I mean, our kids aren't even going back to school. So that in and of itself, you may be able to go back to work, your spouse may go back to work, but the children are going to be still home trying to finish school. And then I'm sure it's going to be challenging to find care over the summer without school in place. So the stressors that are happening right now aren't going to just disappear. And our current situation didn't cause, within the world and country, didn't cause your husband to do what he's doing. There's something wrong with him. If he is abusing you, and whether it's verbally, emotionally, physically, he needs help. But it's not your job to help him, because you can't fix him. You can only help and fix yourself and your children who rely on you. And that is very hard for most women to accept, and frankly, men, because you're in a committed relationship. And many of us think that we can fix that other person and we can make it better if I just keep the kids quiet. If we, I could run through a list, and I'm sure many of you have heard that. If he just didn't drink, and if we were really just quiet, or dinner was ready, the house was cleaner, our schedules were different. There's so many reasons, but at the end of the day, there's something that is wrong with that person. And unless they get help or fix it, it's not going to change. And so thank you so much for watching. I know that JD will post the numbers and website resources for everyone on our Facebook page. And if you are in this particular situation, if you're afraid, if you've heard this and something has resonated within you, please call our office. We are fully operational, even if we're not all in the same place. We are all working together for the benefit of women, and would really welcome the opportunity to help you get to another place. So I hope this has helped. And if you know of somebody in this situation, please forward the video, maybe call and get some information that you can help them with, and just be a good friend, because they're the only ones who can help themselves. But if you're there and supportive and have the information available for them, then they're going to take it eventually. It's just going to be on their time frame. So thank you so much for listening today.
Thank you, everyone who's able to listen in today for Family Law Fridays. As always, if there is a topic you would like to be addressed or a question you'd like answered, please call, email, or send us a Facebook message, and it could be addressed in an upcoming video. We hope you found the information today helpful. If you think of any additional questions, like I said, please call our office or send us a message. Our phone number is 904-241-0012. Thank you, and see you next time.